Netflix's new film Mank gives us David Fincher, Gary Oldman, and Citizen Kane, but is it worth your time to stream?
Of course it is.
If you have a fascination with old Hollywood and people like Herman Mankiewicz and Orson Welles and Louis B. Mayer, which might reduce the number of people in the audience who are seriously going to dial into Mank. Let's get into our review of David Fincher's new film, which is about the making of Citizen Kane and who gets the screenplay credits. Thriller. It's going to be coming to the Netflix streaming service. It is definitely an Oscar contender because of the fact that Gary Oldman and David Fincher are involved in it. I'm going to tell you whether it is worth watching. Before we dive into the review, though, do me a favor. Go down, hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, and then that way, every time we post a new review here on CinemaBlend, you guys can be the first ones to come and watch it. If you've watched the trailer for Mank, and you probably have before you came to watch this review, you will realize that it is a rich recreation of old Hollywood. It is set in the early 1940s when Orson Welles, who was in his early 20s and making a name for himself in the entertainment field, was given the free-for-all contract to come out to Hollywood, put his storytelling skills to work for one of the major studios, and he decided he was going to go after a larger-than-life figure in William Randolph Hearst. Now, Hearst at the time was a extremely powerful publishing icon who also was dabbling in politics and heavy social causes, and going after him would have seemed like a really bad idea. But Mank decides that it's going to tell why the studios were trying to figure out how to move forward and why they wanted to sort of avoid pushing the buttons of somebody as powerful as William Randolph Hearst, while also explaining why Herman Mankiewicz, who's played by Gary Oldman, would want to go after Hearst.
Ready and willing to hunt the great white whale?
Just call me Ahab.
David Fincher and his team obviously know how to make an incredible movie, and this is shot in black and white on digital, which Fincher knows how to use to make it look a lot like film, so it feels like a period movie that is pulled right out of the late 30s, early 40s. It has so many of those touches that makes it feel like you are watching something created by the old Warner Brothers, the MGM studios in their prime. It is, again, an expert recreation of the type of films that came around during that time. And also the score, which is always essential to David Fincher's work, is also done by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who've worked with him on multiple films before. But the two composers sort of rose to the challenge of coming up with something that is really period authentic by only using instruments on the score that were around at the time that the movie was being filmed. So you could tell that Fincher and his team really went to great lengths to make sure that Mank felt very period authentic, and if you're into that type of thing, you will absolutely appreciate it while you watch Mank unfurl on your television screen.
That's the real magic of the movies.
Now, because of all the things that Fincher and his team do in order to make it feel period authentic, Mank is without a doubt catnip for people who consider themselves to be film historians. If you have ever sat at home and wondered about who deserves proper credit for the screenplay of Citizen Kane, whether it be Orson Welles or Herman Mankiewicz, this is the movie for you. Those two obviously won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. It's the only Oscar that Citizen Kane won back in the early 1940s. In telling the story of why Mankiewicz wanted to go after William Randolph Hearst in the first place, Mank has to get into a number of really colorful characters from the time, including Herman's own brother Joseph, who becomes a newbie to the film industry, introduced into the screenwriter's room by his brother Herman. It gets into people like David O. Selznick, Irving Thalberg, powerful people in old Hollywood at the time, and it might be extremely exciting for you to see them recreated on screen. For people who, again, get lost in this world of old Hollywood and want to see how labor union disputes could affect people at the studio level and how politics played a role in the types of stories that the major Hollywood studios at the time told, you're going to be amazed that David Fincher actually took the time to convince Netflix to let him make a movie about these issues.
This is different. This is about something.
I found it to be really fascinating. I'm really intrigued by a lot of these old Hollywood stories, yet I will have to say that there were even a few points during Mank where I was like, okay, this feels a bit like homework. Like, this is a lot of heavy lifting, and I don't doubt that it's all very accurate. Fincher is, without a doubt, meticulous in his approach to these types of subjects and films, and I appreciated the craft that was going into it, and did manage to keep up with everything that was sort of going on with Mank and the way that he was pouring his heart into the screenplay for Citizen Kane, while also filling in the backstory of what his motivations for why he wanted to write Citizen Kane aimed a bullseye directly at William Randolph Hearst in the first place. But if you don't give a damn about the old Hollywood studios and the heads of those production houses and why they made the films that they did, you're going to have a hard time with Mank, which brings me to my final point.
What is it the writer says? Tell the story you know.
I just don't know if casual audiences are going to care a lick about most of what's happening in here. You can dial into Gary Oldman's performance for the most part, and it will carry you through Mank. You can get really excited about figuring out what his motivations are going to be for why he wants to write Citizen Kane in the first place. It's one of those making of Hollywood icon stories where the writers are the smartest guys in the room. And I don't doubt that that is probably the case as well too, but it appeals to the higher sensibilities of people who really plug into that vibe of just like how snappy Hollywood writers can be and how the behind the scenes on a production can sometimes be more exciting than the movie that makes its way to screen.
That's director proof.
Unless that's your target, unless that's your goal, I could see some people putting Mank on, giving it about 20 or 30 minutes and realizing this is not for you, and punching out, because Fincher has a hard time finding a character who can be our surrogate to get us into the story. Gary Oldman's portrayal of Herman Mankiewicz, now Mankiewicz at the time, I mean, he was a bit of a scoundrel. He was a bit of the smartest guy in the room, and he knew it, and the way that he would sort of puncture through the arrogance of the aristocratic wealth around him was exciting, but also can go a long way to us sort of dismissing him as a main character, and I don't quite know if he's the proper way of getting into the story the way that we needed him to be. Fincher went down a very similar path with this when he did The Social Network, but at that point he had an Aaron Sorkin screenplay that he can work on. Here he's adapting a screenplay that is credited to his late father, and I think it's really great that Fincher decided he was going to make Mank as a tribute to his dad and bring this screenplay to the big screen. But I do think that it's a niche audience that's dialed into Mank, and I think that people are going to appreciate the craft, they're going to dig the performances in it, but I do think it loses its way through a lot of the studio politics and actual real-life labor politics that were influential at the time of the studios putting Citizen Kane together and bringing it to the big screen in 1941.
At this rate, you will never finish.
For that reason, I am giving David Fincher's film Mank 4 stars out of 5. It is exquisitely produced. The technical aspects of it are fantastic. I think it's amazing that there's a film about the creation of Citizen Kane that exists now, and I look forward to revisiting it. I just know that it's going to have a hard time breaking through with casual audiences. And it's funny that Netflix, over the years, has invested time into the artistic endeavors of people like Alfonso Cuarón, David Fincher now in this case too. These are passionate projects for these creators, but when you heard from mainstream audiences who see this new film pop up on the streaming service and they give it a shot, it doesn't connect with them right away. So I think that they are still somewhat niche, and they have to sort of swing for that middle ground of an artistic project that's still going to maybe appeal to a larger audience, and I don't think that Netflix necessarily has found that yet. So I think it's a 4 star out of 5. I could see why Netflix is going to push it really hard to back it for the Academy Awards, and I wouldn't be surprised if Gary Oldman got himself into the race, as well as probably Fincher's father's screenplay, and maybe Fincher for director as well too, as the members of the Directors Guild realize the amount of craft that went into the making of the film. You guys will be able to see it eventually. It's coming to select theaters on November 13th, and then it's going to make its way to the streaming service shortly after that. So make sure that you check it out, and I would love to hear your comments about it. When you do see Mank, make sure that you come back here and hit the comment section down below. Turn on your notifications, and then that way, every single time that we post a new review here on CinemaBlend, you guys can come and watch it.